Okay, so hey, look, thank you everyone for coming today for another Team Parker update. I've got quite a bit of serious content to rattle through, and after that we can Joe and Kev take some questions and then get some photos. So a quick update from Team Parker. We're entering into a conditional contract with Lucas Brown that's going through as we speak in final stage negotiation. But one of the conditions is that if we can make a lucrative sort of unification bout, we can then exit the Brown contract, provided we do look after Lucas Brown in some way. We also still have lucrative offers from Russia and China that are in the works. Team Parker has met to discuss a possible unification bout with Anthony Joshua and where that's at. Behind the scenes, negotiations are ongoing with Eddie Hearn, so Hearn and I have been exchanging emails on what a deal might look like. But the Parker team are now at a stage where they're willing to make public their final bottom line position, which is utterly non-negotiable. And so first of all, the deal would have to be an open book revenue share. Why? Because there's a whole lot of revenue streams that are potentially invisible, like host city investment, pub and club, pay-per-view, etc., etc. So a fixed fee doesn't really do it justice. We want all revenue and costs in the pot to see what it is. So all that's to be agreed is what is a fair, respectable ratio for each boxer, for Joshua and Parker. And our team have decided our bottom line minimum will drop it a little as a sign of good faith and proof that we're not all talk and we do want to unify. We started around 50 or 40%, and we're going to drop down to 35% of net profit to unify, and we'll take the fight next if Joshua will agree. I'll explain why we feel anything less than 35% is not only disrespectful to Joseph Parker, but a disgrace. Well, first of all, Joshua has two of the major credible heavyweight bouts, and Parker has one of them. So it's sort of around the 2/3, 1/3. There seems a natural justice to that. Kids around the world dream of becoming heavyweight world champion so they can set up their family for life. And you know, Joseph started at age 3 or 4 with his dad and done the hard yards for 20-something years, and the team around him. And that's got to count for something. A mandatory bout pays 30%, voluntary usually less. So if a mandatory 30, what's a global unification worth? It's got to be worth 35% for us, because it's an intercontinental event that would only happen once every 10 years. I think the last one was Klitschko 7-8 years ago, and the last undisputed champion was Lennox Lewis. We want to make that happen. We're not all talk. So the onus is now on Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua to back up their words. So to prove they're sincere, Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua have to put together a fight with either Joseph Parker or Deontay Wilder. But if they don't, if they instead take a hand-picked voluntary like Alexander Ustinov, that would be very embarrassing for them, and it would show that they're probably prioritising money over unifying the division. A unification bout is triple the size, maybe quadruple the size of a voluntary. And why is that? Perceived competition. You've got two unbeaten champions. Either man could win. You could say it's a 50-50 fight. Parochialism. You've got England versus New Zealand. You've got a perceived underdog versus a perceived, bigger champion or whatever. That's not how we see it, but it has that ingredient. And the third important ingredient, it's got 2 stars. Our job is to build Joseph Parker's profile in the UK, and part of what we're going to do today is going to really put Joseph on the map in the UK, and it's going to create a lot of discussion among Joshua fans. We're probably going to cop some hate, as we often do. So even if Hearn and Joshua only care about the money, they should still unify. Why? Because it's triple the size, a true global event, the pie is much bigger. And so we're offering Hearn and Joshua 65% of a very, very big pie. So it will look a little weak if they instead went for voluntary and tried to grab 80 or 90% of a very small pie, and the public, the fans, they'll lose a bit of respect. So even at 55%, they're going to make more money unifying, so there are no excuses. Why does Joseph Parker beat Anthony Joshua? Simple. Parker has a granite chin, whereas Joshua may possibly have a glass jaw. Joshua's been dropped numerous times. Dropped at an amateur, dropped in sparring, dropped in the ring. It's the worst kept secret in British boxing. No one really talks about it much. It's like the story of the Emperor's new clothes. And we wonder whether that's because Sky Sport, UK, Eddie Hearn and Joshua are powerful, and maybe the media's scared to talk about it. But, why not discuss it? It's a genuine weakness, and it's backed by facts. So our job as a promoter, raising Joseph's profile in the UK, proving to fans it's actually a 50-50 fight and explaining why. Creating discussion, discord, rivalry. And we're going to do that using evidence and facts. We're going to name some of the many people who have dropped Anthony Joshua. And there's no disrespect here. Some Joshua fans are already in social media saying we're disrespectful. Well, first of all this footage is in the public domain if you Google it. We're not revealing anything that's not available to any person in the world. And it's all factual. So the only thing disrespectful is Hearn and Joshua's lowball offer to Joseph Parker. So we're highlighting one of Joshua's weaknesses, his chin. Names of people who have dropped Anthony Joshua. We've got Lawrence Okoli, Maihi Nistor, Daniel Dubois, Vladimir Klitschko, David Price, and Dillian White in the amateurs. And we're convinced there'll be many more who've dropped Joshua. So our first offer to anyone in the United Kingdom, send us proof that you have also dropped Anthony Joshua, and be the first to do so, and we'll send you a special gift in the mail. I think we've got some footage now. We'll break for it and look at some footage of Joshua being dropped. There's heaps more. This is just a snippet. We should move that lectern, Craig, or no? Yeah?
Are we putting these through or just leaving them there?
Sorry.
was dropped in sparring and your name was mentioned. Any comments you can make about that?
Yeah, I smashed them up. He knows the truth. I know the truth.
You sparred Anthony Joshua and they said, quote, you dropped him. What happened in that sparring?
Yeah, that happened. You mentioned David Price. He's talked about that sparring story. What's the truth about that?
Yeah, he dropped me in sparring.
So, there we demonstrated the main chink in Joshua's armour with factual evidence. And why shouldn't people talk about it? Because it's a fact. So in contrast, Joseph Parker has a granite chin. He's never been dropped. Joseph Parker's never been dropped as an amateur, never been dropped in sparring, and never been dropped as a professional. He's beaten very hard men like Carlos Takam and Andy Ruiz, and even they never dropped him. So our second offer of today is to all Anthony Joshua fans anywhere in the world. If you can send us proof that Joseph Parker's ever been dropped and be the first to do so, we'll send you a cheque for 10,000 British pounds.
I'll match that. I'll match that and put up 10,000 British pounds myself.
So there's 20,000 British pounds for any Joshua fan who can show that Parker's been dropped. He hasn't. In closing, our message to Anthony Joshua, and it's a serious message, is we want the opportunity to test your chin so much that we'll let you keep 65% of the profit, even though it's intercontinental unification. You have no excuses. Show Parker some respect. Let's make the fight. That's it. Questions?
David, say for instance the Klitschko Joshua fight, what would the split been then? Was it 50-50?
Look, I actually don't know, but I suspect it would have been a lot more respectful than what they're offering us.
Do you need them more than they need you, or vice versa?
They've said loudly they want to unify. They can't unify without us, so they need us unless they're going to break their word.
Great Champions League, great champions. Do you feel like you need Anthony Joshua, Joseph?
I feel like we both want to unify the bouts. So he's saying that he wants to unify. I've said I want to unify, and as you can see, we're the only ones pushing for the fight. Things have gone pretty quiet, but if they really want to unify, then they should make the fight happen.
Are you happy with those terms on the contract? It says if maybe you're going to line up a 5 Lucas Brown, and if something does happen, you'll always choose Anthony Joshua over that if you can.
Yeah, I'm happy with my team's taking care of that. I think my focus is to keep in shape and prepare if the fight does happen, so I can go there and knock him out.
David, when did you sort out a conditional contract with Lucas Brown?
No, it's been under negotiation for a while, and they've sent the contract back to us overnight with some feedback, and so that deals the broader important terms are already agreed, and so that sort of gives us a good massive Australasian event, and then the onus is really on Hearn and Joshua to back up their words and unify, and also pay a respectful sum to Joseph Parker.
Lucas Brown posted on social media last night he didn't really know what was going on with the Parker fight.
Yeah, well, his promoters are in the UK, his manager's somewhere else, and he's sitting tight waiting for news, so it's possible he's not fully up to date.
That would be in March?
Yeah, probably end of March or early April.
When was your last conversation with Eddie?
I emailed him last night, and then when I woke up this morning, there was a reply from him.
Saying?
Oh, he said we're getting closer. But, we're not there yet. We're communicating our bottom line, and we mean it. There's certain dignity in unifying, and anything less than 35. I think even Joshua fans will hopefully agree that a genuine world champion with 22 years of effort from childhood, who's got a genuine belt, is unbeaten, and is willing to put it all on the line and unify, should be paid a respectable 35%. And I'd say the British fans would agree.
What would you expect the total kind of pot to be for a fight like this?
Depends. It builds over time. A lot of Joshua fans are going to find this today, somehow they'll decide it's disrespectful when it isn't really. You can Google all that stuff we showed, and that'll create a rivalry, and a lot of people start demanding Eddie make the fight with Parker, unify. So they'll come under massive pressure to unify. Embarrassing. And that rivalry and building in the media can turn a $20 million event into a $50 million event. It's hard to say, but the biggest fights always have those ingredients of perceived competition, parochialism, and both guys being stars. And today, again, so Josh was here in the UK, today we'll get Parker up in profile. And Wilder's approach is trash talking, our approach is fact.
Kevin, you said in the media recently you want Joe to be a bit more aggressive in what he says in the media. Do you think there's a danger of kind of taking him away from, I guess, what his natural persona has been in New Zealand, and that's what's kind of made him popular in New Zealand?
No, because I'll tell you what, Joseph Parker knows the sort of person he is. The people in Joseph Parker's team know what sort of person he is. This is a business, and this is a very, very big business. And when you're trying to put together a fight of this caliber, you know, we need Joe to be a little bit more aggressive in the media. We all know that Conor McGregor was recently paid $100 million fighting Floyd Mayweather, and he wasn't paid $100 million telling Floyd how pretty he was. You know, he was paid $100 million to abuse him and insult him every chance he got. Not that I'm asking Joe to do that, because that's not the person Joseph Parker is. But we do need, you know, the truth is this. That this whole piece of business with Joe fighting Anthony Joshua has been driven by Joseph Parker. Joe had approached our team. You know, we were looking to put together the Lucas Brown fight. Joe said, I think this is the right time. He looked at the Takam fight, as we all did. And I'll tell you what, I think the Takam fight actually put things really right back into perspective again, where Joseph Parker's stocks went up, Anthony Joshua's stocks went down. He took the fight on 12 days' notice. He struggled to attack him. Joe, like myself, saw in that fight a lot of flaws. And we realised that now's a pretty good time to be going after Anthony Joshua before someone else beats him.
Given you recently started with a new strength and conditioning trainer, how good is that going?
Well, Joe's very, very happy with Sean Hughes. It's a man with a lot of experience, a lot of international experience working with elite athletes. The two of them have a nice rapport together. They work well together, and I think it's going to add definite strength to our team.
Explosiveness?
We're working on all aspects of Joe's physical game. He will be developing areas that need strengthening up and getting a little bit more flexibility and full movement through the core that hopefully will improve his balance, improve his foot speed, and improve his punching power.
Do you want him more down around that weight where he fought? I think Dimitrenko and Takam is between 106 and 109. He's kind of floated above that.
Yeah, I think, you know, we've talked about this a few times. I think 106, 107 is a very good weight for Joe, a very fast weight, a very mobile weight, a weight that I would like him at. I've spoken to Joe in detail about that weight, and he knows that some of his best fights have been at that weight. So I think, you know, when we start fighting in 2018, you'll see Joseph Parker at that 106, 107.
Joe, Joshua's been a bit more.
You're the champ.
Talking of personas, Joshua himself has been a bit more aggressive on social media lately, calling out Fury, making some jibes at you. Do you think the lack of a big unification fight is getting to him as well? That Hearn hasn't been able to deliver either Wilder or yourself to them?
I'm not sure. I just think some of the things that we did on Twitter sort of got to him, and he doesn't really react like that on Twitter.
No.
He's more humble and relaxed, but he was a bit aggressive. And I think I think he makes a lot of decisions himself. And I guess he keeps saying unification, he keeps saying it, but is it actually what he wants? But we're not sure, because they've actually gone pretty quiet. We're giving him every chance to accept the fight, but like we said, we're the only ones pushing for it.
Do you think he gets hacked off with Tyson Fury, chipping away at him still?
I think he does. I think he gets pretty angry at what Fury says. And Fury's one of those guys that what he says is quite funny and makes everyone laugh, but I think it's for him it's pretty offensive.
How do you feel about being a bit more aggressive on social media, Joe?
That's good. It's good banter. It's we're pretty relaxed on social media. They're coming quite aggressive, but I think it's good to get the message across.
David, just back to the split. Does that include everything, pay-per-view as well, or what happens on that front?
Well, look, the only fair way to do the deal is revenue share, and then you'd put everything in the pot. UK household pay-per-view, UK pubs, sponsorship. I'd run a host city promotion. If I was doing it, I'd talk to various locations, Cardiff, London, Scotland, whatever, get them competing, and an event would attract thousands of visitors. That has an economic value. That goes in. Sponsorship, US television, global, New Zealand, pay-per-view, food and beverage, everything goes in the pot, all the costs come out, and whatever the balance is shared on an agreed ratio. That's a fair way to do it, and it incentivises both parties to make the promotion as big as possible. And had we quietly accepted Eddie's offer very respectfully behind the scenes without any noise, we got ripped off. So, we're going about this in such a way that we believe either we'll get a fair deal or the fight won't happen.
Was his last offer around 10%?
He hasn't put a percentage on it yet. He's just telling us that our 35 is way too much, which is a bit silly because that's viewing a global unification once a decade. It's treating it like a voluntary. But his only other option is to take Wilder and probably be KO'd, and then we'd fight Wilder, or take a voluntary, but it would be very embarrassing for Eddie and Anthony Joshua to take a voluntary under the circumstances. They'd be breaking their word. And I think our 35%, any right-thinking person, including Joshua fans, would say, yep, that's fair and reasonable. Joshua's set up. Joseph Parker deserves and has earned the right to set himself up for life.
Do you think your egos are pushing towards that?
Everyone has an ego, and I think there'll be a lot of discussion about it. I think that they'll be under a lot of pressure to unify, as they said they want to.
At what point do you focus on Lucas? Because obviously you can't keep...
Well, at some point, we've made things pretty clear. So either we do a deal or we don't, and if we don't, we won't do the deal for short money. We'll go in a different direction, and so will Joshua. If he fights Wilder, I think that could easily go Wilder's way. And then we would have the option of looking at a Wilder fight in the future, or maybe, this will go on as long as it takes for them to be fair. So it's balls in their court. They can speed this up and make the fight now at 35-65, or it could be like a Tua Cameron or a Pat Mayweather that drags on 4 years. And the funny thing is those mega fights, they always happen. And it only takes a long time when one party is greedy in our view and not fair. And it's when they do happen, it always ends up around that 60-40 or 50-50 in the case of Tua Cameron on a New Zealand level. So, so Eddie should know that, and so why delay? Make the fight now. Let's not mess around.
This fight's not going to take 4 years to make, believe me. And let's remember, this was Eddie Hearn who actually drove it in the media. He's the one that came out and said, we want Joseph Parker. Anthony Joshua wants Joseph Parker. We want Parker first up in 2018. It wasn't us that said that. And that's when Joe came to the team and he said, they want me? Okay, make the fight. Let's do it. So, we're stepped up. But I tell you what, you look at the resumes of the guys. Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker. I can promise you this. You look at all the names on the records, and I'll stand here today in front of you and tell you that we have the strongest resume out of those three people. There's no one on Wilder's record that Joshua and Joe wouldn't beat. Anthony Joshua's got Klitschko at the age of 40. Well, let's remember, we know Klitschko. We're in camp with him for 3 weeks, and he let Joe spar him 3 times. And I think that told us enough. Okay, and Carlos Takam, who he took on 12 days' notice. We have the best resume. Give us the respect that Joseph Parker deserves. That's all we're asking. They wanted the fight. We stepped up. We will take the fight. Give us respect.
So they wanted the fight so much, and now it's all about money. But what you know about Anthony Joshua, is he about the fight or is he about the money so far?
Well, that's what we're going to find out. We're going to find out the answer to that question.
Kevin, if you're due to fight Lucas Brown, say at the end of March, how would you like a decision in terms of when that fight is going ahead to prepare?
Well, David knows, because I talk to him all the time about it, and I'd like a decision now. But a fight of this magnitude and the business that's involved with it takes a little bit of time. Obviously, the sooner the better for me. But I'm also well aware that March is a little way off. both Lucas Brown and Anthony Joshua are both very big guys. One's 6'5", one's 6'6". They both hit very hard with their right hand. So there's similarities there. But I would like to know sometime before the end of this year.
And how do you think Joe shapes up against Lucas if that's the fight that goes ahead?
I think Joe shapes up very well against both guys. And, you know, the old cliche, you know, styles make fights. Both these guys are going to come forward. And they're going to come forward onto Joe's punches. And I back Joe's hand speed against both Lucas Brown and Anthony Joshua.
David, you talked about setting Joe up for life. I guess there is a real possibility if he fights Joshua of losing. How much do you need to do to kind of compensate for, if he loses the belt, how much that would damage his earnings? Like, how far will that set him back?
Our goal is to unify. So the idea of unifying has dignity. It's it's aspirational. That's the goal. Of course, there's a risk of losing, and so when you assess what's a fair ratio, our assessment is that 35% is a fair enough ratio to compensate Joseph for that risk. There's ways you can deal with it. You put clauses in the contract guaranteeing a follow-up fight, whether it be Joshua or not, could be someone else, and you can mitigate that a little bit. But that's precisely why 35% is fair, because after 20-something years of work to get to the title, we're going to risk it. And Joshua's going to make nearly double us, so he needs to step up and back up his words.
But 35% of a fight against Joshua is probably still a lot more than he would have earned for beating Fury.
Absolutely, it would be, yes.
And it should be, because it's a unification fight. You know, fighting the hottest prospect that we've had in the heavyweight division in the last decade.
David, you made it clear about Joshua's chin, and obviously Eddie Hearn will be even more aware of who's dropped and who hasn't been you. He can also sell 75,000 tickets fighting no ones. So do you think really Eddie Hearn is quite content to let this fight pass for now because he knows that either Joe or Wilder are a real threat, and he'll just string along a couple more big fights before having to push the button?
So we won't accept less than 35%. So if Hearn chooses to avoid Wilder and Parker, then it will be embarrassing. The fans will say that they're all about the money. Why wouldn't they unify? What's wrong with 65% of a massive intercontinental event? There is literally no excuse not to do the deal, and they'll come under massive pressure and lose the respect of boxing fans around the world if they don't do the deal.
Have you had any chats with Tony Value? His fight with David Hayes has fallen over.
We might do something about Value next week, but today we're here to talk about Joshua.
So you have been in touch with him?
No, we're not going to comment on that today, but yeah, today it's Joshua.
Joe, you look a little hot under the collar. Why are you sweating so much?
Because I was carrying this heavy belt. Come carry it for a while.
Yeah.
Thought you were okay that I'm sweating. Sweating
quite
means you're
hot.
healthy.
It is quite hot in here.
Does it mean you're healthy when you sweat?
Very much.
Very healthy.
You're not worried about the fight, are you?
Why would I be worried? I got the better chin. He's got a glass chin, so.
And I can promise you this, there was something that they wanted in a clause in the contract, that Eddie wanted, and don't forget, both guys, it's a unification bout, both guys are world champions. He wanted a rematch clause, because he knows that there's a good chance that Joe will hit him and knock him out.
Look, if Joseph's chin was like Anthony Joshua's, I too would demand a rematch clause, but we're pretty confident, so that's not a deal breaker for us.
So you've got that far advanced that you're looking at clauses and sub-clauses?
No, we've loosely discussed that, but there's no discussion until the broader ratio is fair, and that's all we want, fairness.
So Eddie has said if we do any deal, there will be a rematch.
That's loosely been floated, and like I said, if my fighter was being dropped all the time, I want a rematch clause too.
Guardian of your belt.
Me?
Yeah. I saw Mum bring it in.
Yeah, that's right. Forever.
No one's going to take it off her.
I asked her to borrow it for the press conference.
Joe, you said before, to be the champ, you have to beat the champ. Why not accept the offer from AJ? Right now you're on the top 5 list. When you beat him, you'll be on the all-time list. So, you know, if you win the fight, then you get to dictate the terms and the purse. So why not
Accept what offer?
the offer that they have on the table?
Is
Right?
that fair? It's not. I'm not even fighting for myself, like David said. I've worked for how many years to get the belt. Now I want to unify the belt, and we want to fight if it's fair.
But if you beat him, then you get to dictate the
I
terms.
will beat
Right?
him, but I want a fair deal for when I beat him, and then when I beat him, I'll make a better deal.
Right, guys, I think we're done. We will, if you do want a couple of one-on-ones, Andrew, or you guys fine? Photo opportunity, whatever it is, we'll wrap it up.
Thank you.